Hey everybody, happy Valentine's Day. I think this is going to be an angle for a lot of videos. I have a couple of things to talk to you about. Number one, let's open a blind date with a book that I got recently. Okay, so anytime I go to a bookshop and they have blind dates with books, I'm gonna get them, or I'm gonna get one. This one I got when I was in Idaho last summer. And so it says on the front, it's a romance, LGBTQ plus, and witchy. And I'm hoping that I don't already have this one because that is very much my vibe. But whenever I went to check out, the girl at the register said that this is part of a duology or a series. I don't know how many books. And somebody else had just gotten another one in the same series that was wrapped up in this, which tells me that hopefully it doesn't matter what order you read these books in. All right. Back in a Spell by Elena Harper. Not heard of this one. Oh, very nice. Okay. An awkward first date leads to a sparkling romance between one of the most powerful witches in town and a magical newbie in this rom-com by Elena Harper. New York Times bestselling author of Payback's a Witch. I have heard of Payback's a Witch. Maybe that was the other one that was in there. A Witches of Thistle Grove novel. That sounds fun and romantic for Valentine's. This one, I don't remember specifically where we were. I was with John and we were in a bookshop. But I think that we were just trying to kill time. I really don't remember. But yeah, I ended up getting blind date with the book. I think I got a few other things there as well. But this one, it says The Crazy Book Lady. I don't know if that's the name of the store. Maybe it was, but spy thriller is the big thing. So it's venture into this complex and captivating narrative where the end of the Vietnam War and the start to new life in America for its protagonist, a half-French, half-Vietnamese communist spy, unfolds. With a foot in two worlds, the unnamed narrator navigates the murky waters of loyalty, identity, and politics as he reports back to his communist superiors while embedding himself in a Vietnamese refugee community in the U.S. Crafts a masterful tale of espionage, conflicted loyalty, and the search for identity amidst the chaos of displacement. Honestly, it's a little political for my taste. If I am reading something political, I tend to want it to be like about present day, but also some of those themes seem very relevant. So also just like, can we appreciate the attention to detail, the little stamp, the wax seal? This is very cute, very well done. I love any of the blind date with the books, but this one, they really took their time and put in a lot of effort. There we go. Any guesses? Have any of you guys read something like this? Like in the last video where I told you I was out of ideas and I was looking for inspiration, people wanted to know, well, you guys asked about my bookshelf, so this isn't quite the same, but book topics came up as Interesting. Okay. I appreciate the wrapping, but also may have wrapped it a little too well. Also, these scissors are not very good. My God. I did not want anybody finding out what this book was. Oh, it's thick. That makes me think I'm probably gonna wait a little while to read it. Alright. The Sympathizer. A novel by Viet Tong Nguyen. I think that's how you say the name. Okay. Pulitzer Prize in Fiction. Apparently a lot of people think this book is amazing, so it is used. It was a used bookshop, I do remember that. Interesting. I always like looking through used books, just in case people left little notes. Sometimes they did. So that's part one. Part two is I recently put all of the books that I've read since I started tracking, which was 2020, into a spreadsheet so that I could do some math, some data analysis, if you will. And I just started doing it. So there's a lot of columns that I could add here. I don't use Goodreads or Storygraph or anything like that. So when I was tracking it in my phone, it was literally just the name of the book and just to keep track of how many books I've read each year. And so I put all of these into Excel and I added in the author name and the year the book was published. I'm not positive that the year the book was published is right in all cases because I did find a couple of times where the source I was using was wrong or it had the reprint date instead of the original published date. So over the last 5 years, so 2020 through 2024, I read 137 books. The oldest book was published the oldest book was Beowulf. And we don't have an exact published date for Beowulf, so I just put the year 1000. Maybe it's much older than that. I thought that it was in the BC, but the stuff I was seeing was saying somewhere between 900 and 1100 AD. So I just put 1000. The newest book that I read one book that was published in 2024, which I'm surprised. Usually there's a couple of them, but 2024 I did not read very much. I only read 15 books. I guess we can do that. So 2024 I read 15 books. 2023 I read 28 books. 2022 I read 26 books. 2021 I think it's the one that I read just a crazy number. But I also read a bunch of poetry books and I think graphic novels that year. Yeah, 56 in 2021, and then in 2020 it was 12. So 2024 was my second least number of books that I've read, and part of that is just because I moved in with John, and when we were together, we watch TV instead of read. I'm hoping that we can get into some together time where at least I can be reading and he can have some other activity that is not watching TV or YouTube, just because the noise. Or maybe he can wear headphones to do that. We'll see. Anyway, what was I doing? Oh, the mean publishing year was 1976, which I thought it was going to be much a much lower year, like an older year, because I have a couple books in here that are very old, like Beowulf and what's the other? I think Anna Karenina, maybe. I don't know. A couple of them that were very, very old. And so I thought that those outliers were going to pull it down more than it did. But then I read a lot that were published within, the last year or two. So the median, so the mean is the average. Take them all, add all of the years and divide by 137. The median is if you count if you put them in order and you count to the halfway point, so half are younger and half are older, that was 2017. So that tells you like most of the books that I read were in the last decade, or published in the last decade. And then the mode, which is just the year that showed up the most often, was 2021. I don't know that that really means anything. I didn't do an analyze data for exactly how many. Actually, I could do that. Let me. So I read 16 books that were published in 2021, 14 books that were published in 2018, 12 in 2019, 10 in 2020, and 10 in 2017. And then a bunch of other years that were lesser amounts of books. Oh wow, there were 2 that were published in 1954. Were they by the same person? Let me filter. Oh, they were by the same person. The Fellowship of the Ring and the Two Towers. I doubt that they were published in the same year, but the source that I was using, which I told you I don't fully trust, said that they were both published in 1954. Okay. So then the other one that I did was the author. So I wanted to see how many times I repeated authors, and there were definitely some in here that I've read more books by them. Like John Green's only on this list once because I've only read one of his books in the last 5 years. I've read all of his books, but they were just further back in time. Same with J.R.R. Tolkien. I read Fellowship and The Two Towers, but then further back, I read The Hobbit as well. I have not read what's the last one? Is it Return of the King? The Last Jedi? I have not read the last of the Fellowship series. I was having a really difficult time getting through The Two Towers, and part of it is because I was listening to the audiobook. It was a great narrator, but I just kept on wanting it to be the same voices as in the movies, and the narrator does a great job, but it's not the same voices because I'm pretty sure the audiobook I was listening to was recorded before the movies came out. The most recent movies, I guess there were other ones before that. Anyway, sorry. So looking at authors that I repeated the most, just in books that I've read in the last 5 years, Jane Austen was number 1. Really shouldn't surprise anyone. I read 6 of her books in the last 5 years. Then Mark Sanborn, who writes like professional development books, how to be better at work. He wrote The Fred Factor and another one. And then J.R. Tolkien, Robert Louis Stevenson. I had to go back and look because I didn't realize that he wrote Treasure Island and Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. I'm having a hard time believing that's the same guy. Were there two Robert Louis Stevenson authors around the same time? I don't know. Then Jenny Colgan, who writes kind of like rom-com stories, chick flick books, chicklet, I think that's what they call it, where the main character really likes books, some sort of bookshop owner. I don't know if they're in the same universe. It's not the same girl that likes books, at least in the two that I read. But it's very fun, very sweet. I think one of them was Christmas themed. I liked it. Then Stephen King, I read his memoir on writing, and then I read his Misery, which is so good. Oh, kind of creepy, very creepy, but so good. I put off reading Stephen King for the longest time because I don't like being scared, but also as I was going through this list and filling in the author and all of that, and remembering all of these books that I read that I forgot about, there were a lot of psychological thrillers, especially where the woman is like the center of the story, not necessarily a victim, but a lot of times it's a woman who's investigating, and then like she gets pulled into a story and ends up needing some help, or not needing help, but being hurt in some way. But so as I was going through, I was looking for themes like that, and so I think that I'm gonna add a category that's like genre, but they're gonna be my own genre definitions. And then the other thing that I was curious about is I want to see the demographics of what I'm reading. So, the gender of the author, race of the author, and country of origin of the book. I have quite a few on here that were translated, like, I think largely Japanese translated books. But also a few Russian. Anyway, just so that I can go through and see, like, do I have a diverse reading thing? Oh, the other thing I was going to say is there's one more author on here. No, two more authors on here that repeated, but in at least one of the books had a co-author. So Jenna Fischer, I read her book, The Artist's Life, or Artist World. I think it's Artist Life. And then I also read her book that she wrote with Angela Kinsey, Office BFFs. And then Nina LaCour wrote We Are Okay, and then wrote something with David Leviathan. Something like that. I could look it up. I've got this spreadsheet open right in front of me. Yeah, David Leviathan and Nina LaCour. And that one was called You Know Me Well. But yeah, so I want to go and see like how many psychological thrillers, how many professional development books, and then also how many like non-white man authors did I have on here. Um, are there any other things that you think that I should track as far like page count? Maybe that one's a little bit harder to do because I do listen to a lot of audiobooks and I think those count. I don't want to track. I don't know. I go back and forth about whether I should track whether I read it as a physical copy or as an audiobook because there are sometimes where it's both. I swap back and forth. It's not very much because it's difficult for me to keep track of where I am in the book. But yeah, what should I keep track of? What do you think would be interesting? Do you care? Is anybody still listening? If you are listening, then I just want to let you know that I think that you should have a great Valentine's Day and that you deserve all of the greatness in the world and love and hugs. And if you're not listening, then you don't deserve anything. And I hope that you're alone. Okay, good night, sweet dreams.